And we are live. Welcome back to another edition of DT Live. Hope everyone is doing all right this morning. For those of you already in the YouTube chat, can you hear me? Give me a yay or nay on the audio. Can you guys hear me? And we are live. Well, I'm previewing the stream a little bit here, and it looks like I do have audio as far as my microphone audio, and that's all I'm worried about today because I shouldn't be playing any desktop audio or anything for this stream. The topic for today is going to be free software and content creation. I'm going to go over a lot of the software I use to do what I do as far as video content creation. Of course, some of it will also spill over into other areas of focus, such as creating graphics, such as, thumbnails and things like that. I'll go over what I use for thumbnails, audio editing as well. For those of you that are into podcasting, you strictly want to do audio content, we may talk about some of the tools for that. I'm going to go over some of what I use for writing, presentation software, things like that, because I often do that on camera as well. In videos. So, some of the tools I use, and maybe some other more niche items. Sometimes people ask me about, hey, how did you achieve that effect on camera? What tool was that you were using on camera for this particular video? So, all right, let's get into some of the chat while we wait a few minutes for everyone to arrive. Give everybody a few minutes to get here before we get into the topic today. Yeah, Linux luminaries, lots of hearts, lots of plus signs. All right, appreciate that. Don't forget to create a super strong and complicated password, and that's from Rick. Yeah. Now this machine is fully locked down with the password, so, and I've got the super secure password saved in a password manager, so I don't forget it, because it's such a long password. Yeah, Penguin Bite, hello. I hear you, yay, audio okay. Yeah, got some yays on the audio, very cool. Is there an alternative for Visual Studio? I don't know, I've never used Visual Studio, so I can't really comment on it or alternatives to it. I'll let the chat handle that one. All right. Hold on just a second, guys. Let me make sure we are straight here. All right. Yeah, too much light. I'm not sure. What, oh, you talking about the blue light glasses? I don't I don't know. Are you talking about for you? You've got too much light going on. I will say, that got a little bit of the sniffles today. I don't know, probably allergies. This time of year, down here in Louisiana, pollen is everywhere. It's, so if I sneeze at some point during the stream today, just know that's, just me, with the allergies. As far as time on the stream today, we'll probably go, I'm shooting for about an hour. We may go a little longer. We're just going to play it by ear. I did want to do a stream this week, and today made a little bit of sense. Later in the week, it's going to be tough. Obviously, it's Easter, this week, right? So Friday is Good Friday. It's going to be a federal holiday here in the U.S., so not much is going to go on Friday this week. And then, of course, Sunday is actually Easter Sunday. So, and then I've got some other things going on here in the next couple of days. Got to meet with my accountant and figure out, get my tax situation straight. Because, April 15th will roll around pretty soon. Of course, that's, you got to pay your taxes by April 15th, although I could, put it off a month because many people do. You can actually, put it off till May 15th if you wanted to, with no real penalty. Yeah, NeoVim over VS Codium. I've never really used VS Codium either, so I really can't comment on VS Code. Can't comment on Visual Studio, although Big Pod is in the chat. He is familiar with Visual Studio. He says JetBrains are good alternatives. Now, what is the point of making a second Void Linux video with the default vanilla image with the distro itself is focused on providing an extremely vanilla experience, even more so than Arch? I'm not sure what the question is. What is the point of making a video about Void Linux with the vanilla image when the distro is trying to provide a vanilla image? I don't know, because that's what Void is. Should I show Void in a different light than what it is? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the point of the question was, so you might have to clarify on that. Darth Vader says Emacs over everything. Yeah. Now, not actually planning on doing talking about Emacs today for content creation, although certainly Emacs does come into play. Obviously, I do a lot of show notes. Anything I'm jotting down, typically I just open Emacs. I write everything in org mode typically these days. Any substitute for After Effects? I don't know. I've never used After Effects. So one of the problems with me is because I'm so not familiar with a lot of proprietary software, especially a lot of Windows only software, especially. I'm a Linux user, right? So, and I've been primarily a Linux user for like 16 years now. Now, it's been a long time since I was a Windows user. So anything that doesn't have a Linux port, I mean, I don't know anything about it. So I know that frustrates some of you guys because you asked me about all this software that you guys use on Windows or Mac, and I don't know anything about it. It's just the truth. But, the purpose of today's video, of course, I'm going to talk a lot about the software that does work on Linux. And actually, the software, I think every piece of software I talk about today works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So they're cross-platform pieces of software, which is the great thing. Unlike some of the pieces of software people in the chat are already asking about. So, let's see. Personal preference over anything? Yeah. At the end of the day, use what works for you. Yeah, VS Codium is a fork of VS Code, comes without the telemetry and the tracking. Yeah, they just rip out, some of the nasty bits, but it's essentially the same thing. Yeah. Agni says, Kdenlive secret tips and tricks. Well, I mean, I may open Kdenlive, but, because we're going to move fast today, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on tutorials on any particular tool. So we're not going to do any kind of deep dive. For something like that, I'd need to do a proper pre-recorded video where, obviously, especially on a live stream, if I go off on a 20-minute tangent where I'm, doing stuff in Kdenlive, then I'm not interacting with you guys in the chat. People on a live stream, they want that back and forth conversation. Natron is the alternative I see most often for After Effects. Okay, I know Natron. Well, I say I know Natron. I know it exists. I've installed it before. I've looked at it, but I don't do anything with it. Is DWM better than Qtile? They're different window managers. As far as better, DWM and Qtile are very different in that DWM is a very, very, very minimal window manager that doesn't have a lot of features built into it. So just know what you're getting into. If you go the DWM route, typically you're doing it because you're an extreme minimalist, right? And you're probably doing it for some ideological reasons, right? You're trying to get away from the bloat. But don't be surprised if when you get to DWM that you're missing a lot of things that most other window managers have. Like a sys tray, right? That's just one that pops to mind. Like the ability to actually rotate through the stack on your tiling window manager. That's another one. I think you actually have to patch DWM still to get that functionality. Like there's a lot of like really basic things. You're like, oh, I can't do that with my tiling window manager without patching the code. Yeah, no. Be right back. Beer is chilled. Got to go grab it before it freezes. Yeah, don't leave a beer in the freezer. Yeah, such low alcohol content. You know it's going to freeze and bust on you. Besides, if you're drinking a beer that needs to be chilled, you're drinking the wrong beer. Excuse me. Yeah, if you're drinking something dark, something heavy like a IPA, or something heavy, a porter, or something, a real beer, a man's beer, Big Pod. Then you don't have to chill it. It doesn't even have to be cool. It can be room temperature. And it tastes just fine. Actually, those darker beers, especially like an IPA, they actually taste worse when you get them real cold. You never want them ice cold, right? And if you have an IPA and it comes out of the fridge, and it's cold, pour it in a glass and let it sit for 5 minutes or whatever. Let it warm up a little bit before you drink it, and it will taste 10 times better. Pro tip. All right, well, let's get into content creation on Linux. So let's start with probably the most obvious piece of software. Like if you want to get into making, especially video content, you're probably wanting to either do pre-recorded videos on platforms like YouTube or Odyssey, Rumble, things like that, or you're wanting to live stream on platforms like YouTube or Twitch, and regardless of whether you're doing live streaming or pre-recorded content, you're probably wanting to use OBS. So OBS is free and open source software, and it is the gold standard when it comes to this kind of software, streaming software. And OBS is cross-platform, available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And matter of fact, when I say it's the gold standard, I mean, are there other things you could use? There's a couple of things, especially on Windows, there are some alternatives, but like literally nobody uses them, right? OBS is what everybody uses for streaming and for recording video. Although, when you're talking about strictly recording, especially recording like your desktop, there's some other alternatives you could, like I could use Simple Screen Recorder if all I wanted to do was record my desktop, or I could use FFmpeg, right? I could actually do some FFmpeg scripting if all I wanted to do was record my desktop. But, obviously a lot of times you want to also record a camera, for example, like this camera scene here, in the bottom right-hand corner, which I could turn off for a second here, turn back on. Let me actually switch to empty workspace. Let's see if I can open up a second instance of OBS. This will be interesting because I'm streaming right now. So let's open OBS. It's going to complain because I'm already in OBS on a different screen. Let's open up a second instance. Now, it's not going to look quite right because normally my picture would be here, right? But my camera is being taken up on a second instance of OBS right now. But you can see I've got these scenes here. What you do in OBS is you create scenes with collections of sources, such as this one here would be recording my desktop, which my desktop is this infinite loop of OBS windows right now because my second monitor is what gets recorded on this scene here. This what I call desktop view. It's my second monitor, and I've got this second instance of OBS on the second monitors. That's why we get the inception here, right? We're going down 4 levels deep. We're already in limbo, right? This would be the main scene, which is my camera scene. I also have this floating window here. This is actually just a pop-out chat from the Brave browser. That is all this is. It's this what I labeled YouTube chat. All that is a Windows source. And then what window do I want to capture? Well, I just give it the name of the window, and it captures that. I could hide it if I wanted it. One interesting thing with OBS is you have profiles. If I go to profiles, no, that's not it. It's scene collections. My bad. Scene collection. So I have these scenes here when I record for the DistroTube channel, right? And then recently I started a second channel called DT Options. I have a different set of scenes for that. I don't actually know if I could switch to this scene collection without crashing OBS and crashing this stream. Normally, I would say, don't try it. That's unprofessional to do something that's risky. But you know what? I'm going to try it anyway. Let's switch to the scene collection. All right, so it looks like we're still streaming, so nothing crashed. So I have a main scene here, which is just me on camera right here. I have a desktop view, which is me on camera in a corner, except now we've got the Inception going on. But the cool thing is you can have these scene collections if you have multiple channels, or even not multiple channels. Maybe you just do different style videos on occasion and you want to have those collections of scenes separated so that for whatever reason, you just don't have as many sources to fumble through when you're navigating through OBS. OBS is really fantastic. Like you can get very creative with creating profiles and scenes and importing all your sources. Like you can really get very, you can let it go to your head. Like at one point I had to clean up my OBS. I had so many scenes from past videos. I created all different layouts for various things I've done over the years because, I will occasionally do different kinds of video formats. Sometimes I'll interview guests or whatever, so I'll have different scenes for that, or I'll have a scene specifically for a Zoom chat or a Jitsi chat or a Discord chat, or maybe I have a different scene for each of those platforms because they're all slightly different. They put people in different places, and I had, at one point, I probably had 50 different scenes in OBS just for the things I record for DistroTube, right? And I was like, I don't use like 5 of these scenes are all I ever really use. So I went through recently, just a couple months back, and I deleted a lot of the cruft that was just sitting around in OBS. Back to the chat for a second here. BeerTube. Hey, that IPA thing. I'm being for real. Don't chill those things. Or chill them, but don't have them ice cold. Or if you put them in the fridge, that's fine. But when you take them out, don't open them and immediately start drinking them when they're that cold. Seriously, they will taste better. Pour it in a glass and let it sit for about 5 minutes and then drink it. You'll thank me later. Big Pod says he drinks lagers. Yeah, and honestly, no beer tastes particularly well at room temperature. Yeah, you're drinking the wrong kind of beer. I wouldn't lie to you on those darker beers. Seriously, they taste better not being as cold. Like if you're drinking a really light beer, like most American style beers, Bud Light thing, the real crap. I don't even drink any of that stuff. I don't think I've drank something like a Bud Light or a Miller Lite in 20 years. Or but like lighter style, like Mexican beers, like Corona and Dos Equis, things like that. You got to get those things cold, right? Heineken, that's real. I mean, they're okay beers, but they're really lighter style beers. Yeah, chill those things. Yeah, Brave for the win. Yeah, I have 3 or 4 different browsers installed. I keep some different browsers installed for different things. Probably most people do. A lot of developers will keep several different browsers on hand just to test out, like the sites they're working on. You probably need to keep Firefox around to make sure things look right in Firefox, and you need at least one Chromium-based browser around to make sure things look all right in Chrome. If do I have Firefox installed? Yeah, I do have Firefox on this system. I know I've got Qt Browser also installed here as well. I have at least 3 browsers. I've tried to clean up my systems here recently. So one of the things I've done, I had to reinstall my computer a couple months ago, and I've tried to keep the package count down. So anything I don't actually use on a somewhat frequent basis, I just didn't install. So I had like 2,500 packages installed on the previous installation on this machine. I don't have anywhere near that package count now. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure what the package count is. Let's open a terminal and check it out. Yes. Oh, Pacman-Q lowercase q gives me a list of course, everything installed. Let's pipe that through WC-L for the line count. 1,804 packages. So before I had about 2,500, now I've got 1,800. And probably 300 or so of those packages are Haskell libraries and, really tiny things that almost don't count. Let's see what else. I know I've got a folder with probably 12 or 15 different app images that I carry around. Well, obviously, they're not going to appear in this number. Flatpaks. Do I have any Flatpaks currently installed? Not much. I have Flatpak installed, but doesn't look like I've installed any. I probably installed some and then uninstalled them because I didn't need them. Do I have any snaps? I don't even have a snap installed, do I? Where is Snapd? No, so I don't really have any snaps or Flatpaks. So again, I've kept this kind of clean so far, but how I roll. The more I do things on camera, I'm going to install random pieces of software, and the next thing you know, a year from now, I'm going to have another 1,000 packages installed on this system, more than what I currently have. Don Johnson, he's asking, how do I make browser fonts like Windows? I've mostly gotten used to them, but the fonts looked best on Brave using Windows. Okay. So make sure whatever distribution you're using, you have the Microsoft fonts installed. So Pacman dash capital Q lowercase q. Let's grep for fonts. And the package you want on an Arch-based system is ttf-ms-fonts. That's the Microsoft fonts. So that's your things like Arial and, Comic Sans, all the standard fonts that are on most Windows computers, which you got used to viewing things on a Windows computer before you switch to Linux. So make sure you install that font family there. One other thing you can sometimes run into is sometimes your computer's default fonts will play a role in how browsers show things. So if I open LX Appearance, here's what I'm using to set GTK themes and icon themes. But if I go to font, no, that's not it. Icon, colors. It's actually widget here. You can see the default font. I'm using Ubuntu 11-point font. Sometimes these kinds of settings will also play a role in what certain applications will display as a font. So you may have to play with that a little bit. But definitely, if you don't have the Microsoft fonts installed, you're definitely not going to get that same look from a web browser that you've been used to. Yeah, I'm kind of new to fonts. Do different browsers, font engines affect... Is it system fonts? I mean, different browsers, different browser engines, like a Chromium-based browser and a Firefox browser, for example, or Safari, if you're going the Mac route, yeah, they might look slightly different, right? And the way they render pages, the way they render HTML, they should all look the same, but in reality, there are some minor differences. Yeah, and Don Johnson, he says he noticed Firefox and Chrome have way different fonts, but oddly, Firefox fonts look more like Brave's did on Windows versus they were very bold on Windows. I don't know. One thing to know about Brave, you mentioned how Firefox and Brave's, the fonts look similar. The CEO of Brave, the guy that founded Brave, but he's the CEO and founder of Brave, was the former CEO of Mozilla, right? So he worked on Firefox before he created Brave. So there may be some similarities on what they're doing. I don't know. So back to content creation on Linux. So obviously OBS was what I'm using to record my desktop, to record the camera, to switch scenes. It's all done with OBS. There's plugins also with OBS. I did a video recently on how to zoom in on your desktop on OBS. Let's see if I can actually remember that key binding. So if I do, I don't have that enabled for my DistroTube scene collection. Let's see. Anyway, I have a plugin that I can zoom in and out on the desktop. I don't currently have it enabled though, unfortunately. So, oh. Did you guys catch that? You guys probably didn't even notice. I accidentally hit the wrong key binding. I actually switched to TTY2 there for a second. It probably, the stream was fine, but I couldn't see you guys for a few minutes because I was stuck in the TTY. I had to switch back over to TTY1 here. But OBS, yeah, OBS is awesome. I mentioned also some other things that, you know, with video, if you're doing things with other people, if you're doing any kind of collaborative chats, collaborative podcasting, video podcasting, then you've got to get into certain applications like Zoom or Jitsi or Discord, maybe even Skype, things like that, which I think I've got all of those installed except Skype, but I know I've got Zoom. You know, I've got Jitsi, in case anybody wants to meet on a Jitsi call. I've got Discord, in case anybody wants to meet on a Discord, you know, chat or what. No, because I never know, and it's not just for me why I have those pieces of software. It's also sometimes people ask me to meet with them for doing something on their channel. So I've got a lot of those kinds of software, those, you know, video conferencing kinds of software. In case somebody says, hey, let's meet on a Zoom call, I've got it. Or, hey, let's meet on a Discord call, I've got it. And all of those are cross-platform. Again, Windows, Mac, Linux. They work just fine on Linux. Now, if you are... Now, that's for, like, casual kind of collaborative things. If you're doing a regular podcast with a regular partner, there are better things to use than Discord or Zoom. You know, there's much better ways to handle that kind of thing, because OBS does have the ability. There are actual services out there that can take a audio video stream from different people and you can import it into OBS. That way, like if you're doing a regular 3-person podcast, you can import the other 2 guests each on their own source, their own streaming source. That way you can apply different filters and different audio levels to each and every person in that podcast, you know, while you're recording in OBS. And that's very nice because that really saves you a lot of time. Yeah, BigPod, Video Ninja. Yeah, Video Ninja is one such service. You just go to Video Ninja, everybody joins the site, and yeah, you get a URL basically for each person and their own audio video stream. That way you can plug that into OBS, and you know, it saves a lot of time. I don't do any of that. I know that stuff exists, but I don't do like regular podcasting with regular partners, right? But if I did, that's the way I would go. It just saves a lot of trouble, especially with audio editing later. Plus, you know, there's just limitations. When you do something with something like Zoom or Discord or Jitsi, you really only have 2 audio streams. I have my audio stream that gets recorded in this microphone. It's on its own stream. And then everybody else on the Zoom call, they're on the desktop audio stream. And they're all on one stream. And if one person has their audio really high and another person has their audio really low, that's a nightmare to fix because they're all on one stream. Where if everybody's on their own stream, that is like a 2-second fix, right? Just turn one guy down, turn the other guy up, boom, you're done. Where that's like hours of work potentially if you had to go in a proper audio editor every time somebody speaks, you know, bump this guy down, bump this guy up. It's just, that's a hassle. Yeah, BigPod. I now have a podcast with 2 other hosts. Ah, very cool. Let's see. TMUX. Yeah, somebody's asking me about TMUX. I love your contents, but tell me why do you hate TMUX? I didn't say I hated TMUX. where do you people come up with this? I don't use TMUX, so why would I hate it? I mean, as far as why don't I use TMUX? Because TMUX obviously is a terminal multiplexer. It's for tiling a terminal, you know, having a terminal and then dividing it into its own frames. But, you know, I have a Tiling Window Manager, right? So I just open a second terminal, right? And I get, it's the same effect, right? Plus, much of the time, if I want things to be managed, you know, like multiple terminal windows in their own separate frames or in their own splits. Welcome to the world of Emacs, right? I just opened Emacs. I've got a terminal here in this bottom split. And if I wanted to, I mean, I could keep splitting Emacs, right? Or not split Emacs, right? Please die terminal. How about an exit? There we go. Of course, the Emacs server is running in the background. So did I really kill that terminal? No, it's still running somewhere if I want to come back to it. But yeah, tmux, it's probably great. I have no need to use it. So the only need for tmux would be if I wanted to have that multiplexer in a TTY, tmux would make sense. But again, I'm an Emacs user, and Emacs does also work in a terminal. Even though Emacs is really a GUI program, and most people are using it in a proper GUI setting on Xorg or on Wayland, you know, and these Emacs windows, you know, these are GUI windows, right? They're graphical windows. That's why I have graphics, and that's why, you know, I've got, you know, variable fonts and things like that. They're actual GTK applications. Is actually what Emacs is. It's a GUI program. But there is a version of Emacs that does work in the TTY. So I can also get Emacs in a TTY, and Emacs in a TTY will have Emacs splits, right? So again, you know, if I wasn't an Emacs user, maybe. Although, yeah, I don't know. It's just I've never had a situation where I was like, dang, I really need tmux in this situation. So maybe one day I'll come across some situation where I have a problem to something and the solution is tmux. I've never run into that situation yet, though. Yeah, it's useful to split TTY terminals. Well, the thing is, in a TTY, I can launch Emacs, and Emacs is essentially a terminal. It's got terminals built into it. So then I can just open Emacs in 2 different frames, and I can have 2 different terminals, essentially 2 different TTYs inside Emacs. So, but yeah, again, if I wasn't an Emacs user, yeah, then it would make sense. Have you heard about the Helix text editor? Yeah, people asked me about it a while back. I want to say about 2 years ago was when I first heard about it, and I briefly installed it, and I thought it was a little buggy at the time. It's probably gotten better. You know, I mean, that was a while back. I didn't actually do anything on camera with it because I didn't think it was a great experience at the time. I didn't want to, you know, I never like to highlight pieces of software that, especially free and open source software, you know, people are donating their time essentially to work on these free pieces of software. I don't like trashing pieces of software. I wasn't going to trash it, but I just didn't think it, you know, it was quite where it needed to be at the time. Again, this was a couple years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago. I don't know, but I haven't taken a look at it since. I may at some point. Now, for me personally, I'm good with, you know, my text editing, right? I doubt I'm ever gonna give up Emacs for anything, but I don't mind checking out other editors. I mean, heck, I still open Vim all the time, NeoVim all the time, right? When I'm in a terminal, you know, if I'm doing things on camera and I'm, for whatever reason, already in a terminal, I just open up Vim in a terminal rather than Emacs. I know I get people all the time, why the hell you use Emacs on this video? Then I see you use Vim in this video. Well, a lot of that is just to use different things on different videos, just to confuse you guys, right? That's, if I'm being honest, keep you guys guessing. Kind of like the, you know, I don't do it as much now because I'm trying not to have as much stuff installed on this main production machine. I'm only using Qtile for a window manager these days, but there was a point in time I had like 15 different window managers installed on this machine, and I would often switch to a different window manager for the different videos I'd make, in a week. You might see me use 3 or 4 different window managers and 3 or 4 straight videos. And it confused people. It's like, well, which one are you really using? Which one do you really like? Well, I like them all, right? All right, so that's some of the video recording and streaming stuff. Let's actually talk about recording my desktop. I did want to mention this tool here because the other day somebody asked about ScreenKey, because I did that video on Vim. I was showing you the basic Vim key bindings. And what is ScreenKey? Well, let me hide my face. ScreenKey is just giving you guys the key press, right? So ScreenKey is sitting in the sys tray here. If I open it and go to Preferences, I can change what monitor, because I have got 3 monitors, right? And this one here is the center monitor where I'm recording my desktop. I can choose the font. I can choose whether it's small, medium, or large. I've got it small, although the small you can see is really quite big, but you can get it even bigger depending on how big you want the text. You can also play with the background opacity. I've got it just slightly opaque. Of course, you can change the colors as well. And you can choose exactly where you want it on the screen. You see select window and region. If I hit that button, what I do is I just, select a area of the window. I draw a box, and that would be where ScreenKey would appear. Like if I drew the box here, but I could draw it anywhere on the screen. Or there's some default settings where, it typically is 100% width of the bottom of the screen. I think it's the default, because you can do top, center, bottom as well. So that is ScreenKey for those of you that have the need to record key presses. But certainly this is a bit of a more nerdy kind of crowd. A lot of you guys, if you're interested in video content creation, I know a lot of you guys may be doing things where you need to record key presses. So ScreenKey, free and open source software. It's a really old piece of software. It's been around forever, and it's in everybody's repositories. You should find it. Well, you'll find it in the Arch repo for sure, because I'm using it. You'll find it in Debian and Ubuntu, and pretty much everything. Let's talk about video editing. So video editing, I'm using Kdenlive, of course. It's definitely the best free and open source video editor. Not even close. I've used a lot of different things over the years, just testing things out. Yeah, I've played with things like OpenShot and Shotcut and Pitivi and Flowblade, and I've tried, at least 7 or 8 other open source video editors that are available on Linux, and they're all rather lacking. They're all very rudimentary compared to Kdenlive. Like none of those other options that I just named have even a tenth of the things that Kdenlive has, as far as features and functionality. Kdenlive is really just it's such a fantastic, rather mature project. Can be a little buggy at times, although I will say here in recent years, Kdenlive has been quite good to me. Let me open up a recent project because, heck, why not? Oh, complaining that some things are missing. Yeah, I don't know what is missing, but this is a recent thing I did for my other channel. But it's got your timeline. You can scale the track here. You can scrub through the video, and audio and video. Pretty smooth these days, actually. Kdenlive, really the scrubbing has been a lot better recently. Used to, even on my machines, which my machines are like kind of beastly machines. These are not underpowered machines at all. But scrubbing through the video used to be really jittery and buggy, and now it's kind of buttery smooth. Just going through the thing. Now, of course, you guys won't be able to hear the audio, I don't believe, because I've got the desktop audio not working. Typically, when I not streaming, I would actually hear the audio, obviously, while I'm playing through this stuff. But, you know, you got a lot of cool compositions and effects. Like if you want to, you can play with some of the audio effects, some of the video effects. If I actually right click on one of these clips, and let's go to insert an effect. So these are some of my favorite effects. Let me move this over, that way you guys can see, so my head isn't in the way. You can see some of the effects I often use. Sometimes I'll apply a LUT. A LUT will, you know, do some effects as far as some color effects, color grading essentially, applying a LUT. Sometimes I'll play with some brightness, Bezier curves. Flipbo is one I often use if I record on a phone. So what Flipbo is well, let me enable it, is you flip the x-axis or the y-axis, and, you know, you see, I just flipped the y-axis, right? I'm upside down now, and now I'm upside down and backwards, right? Because, you know, on your phone, obviously, a lot of times it's recording mirrored. So you actually want to turn it around. So you need to flip that x-axis if you record on a phone. So that's an effect. That's why I have that one in my favorites, you know, under effect. And when I say my favorites, when you go to the effects, you know, you can pick an effect here, you know, if you're searching for something. And I believe if you right click on it, add to favorites, and then it would be in that right click menu list down here. When you go to insert effect or insert composition, you know, depending on whether it's an effect or a composition. Some other things I sometimes play with. I often play with Luma Lift Gain. So this is, you know, what some people would think of as, you know, color grading, where I play with, you know, that with the lift, which is more, you know, your whites, you know, making them really dark or bringing them up a little bit. Gamma is more of your mids. You know, of course, this is all going to look bad. Well, let's also change the resolution. There we go. Turning up the gain will make it really washed out. Turning down the gain will make it very dark, very dim. Anyway, Luma Lift Gain. Also, if I right click on the audio portion of the track, I'll have different effects. Some effects I often use with audio: mute the audio for a certain section, normalize the audio, so if for some reason the audio's really low or whatever, you know, you can run the normalize effect, kind of like a compressor effect. And volume keyframeable. Sometimes I just want to raise or lower the volume by a specific amount, so volume keyframeable. If you want to use the keyframes, but typically I'll just do it for the whole clip. And, you know, raise it by 5 decibels or whatever, or lower it by 5 decibels or whatever it is. I can use the slider, or I can type in the numbers. Anyway, Kdenlive, pretty cool effect. Pretty cool editor. And some things, you know, some of you guys might be wondering if I play this. I don't know if it's going to play the sound. No, but like this little intro for DT options, and on my DistroTube videos, you get a similar kind of, you know, little pop out kind of fancy little animation. You know, these animations are done strictly in Kdenlive. All these are, I've created some graphics in GIMP, and I have them zoom in and zoom out and slide from the bottom or the side or whatever, you know, and there's some keyframes going on in these as well. And what I've done is I create these animations one time in Kdenlive, and then I save them. I go to open here, and do not save. There's that animation. I have that saved as a Kdenlive project. So every time I make a video, I can go grab one of those animations, and what I can do is, just like you insert or import certain scenes or images or video files into Kdenlive, you can actually import an entire project. So I just import these projects into Kdenlive, and then I can add the whole project, you know, into my video. So Kdenlive, really cool video editor. Especially the fact that it's free, as in cost, right? It's actually quite amazing. Let's see, back to the chat here. Kdenlive works for me, but to get premium experience, one should use a Mac. Oh, wow. So you should use a Mac for a premium experience. I'll take your word for it. Yeah, you're going to pay a premium is what you're going to pay to use that Mac. But hey, use what works for you. Let's see, DT, can you talk about Linux compatibility? Does it fully support AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel hardware? Yeah, for the most part, you're rarely are you going to find hardware that's not supported on Linux. When we're talking about CPUs, you got no problem. When you're talking about GPUs, for the most part, unless you're using something that just came out yesterday, you're good. And the reason I say, something that just came out yesterday, well, obviously the driver, especially if you're on a static release distribution, something like Debian Stable, for example, the driver's not in your repos yet. So if you can't get a driver for that card, then yeah, you're not going to have a great experience with that card, right? So rolling release distros can be a little better in that respect. If you're buying, again, like the thing that just came out, it can be an issue. But, most people are not doing something like that. But really, with hardware compatibility and Linux, the only issues you really will run into are peripheral devices that need drivers, because some of those manufacturers that create things like your RGB lighted keyboards, or like the Elgato Stream Deck thing, things, some of those companies, they'll create these products and they'll only have a driver that works on Windows or Windows and Mac, right? And they won't have a Linux driver. Without a Linux driver, that product's not going to work on Linux. So always check, like peripheral devices. Printers are another one. Make sure that Linux is supported. And the good thing is, a lot of manufacturers these days, if they do support Linux, a lot of times they'll put it right there on the box. You'll go to the box, you'll see like operating system requirements, and it'll say Windows, Mac, and Linux. Or it'll have the logo, the window thingy logo, the Apple logo, and then you'll see a little penguin. A lot of times, it'll say on the box. If it doesn't say on the box, it may still support Linux. Do a quick Google search. But yeah, that's one of those things now that I'm on Linux, if something doesn't support Linux, then I just forget about it. Like, I'm not interested at that, it's one of those things you never had to, I guess, make choices, make those kinds of decisions with Windows. You just assume everything always works on Windows. They're always going to support Windows, right? With Linux, you will, it's not something that happens all the time, but you will occasionally run into pieces of hardware that won't work on Linux. It doesn't have a Linux driver. Typically, for stuff like that, again, I just forget that product exists. And sometimes I just forget that that company even exists, right? Because some companies, they just don't ever support Linux in any way. None of their products, this is all strictly Windows. And at that point, well, I'm just not going to give you, even if I ran Windows, I'm not going to give you any more money, right? I vote with my dollars, right? I vote. I don't go to the polls to vote. I vote at Best Buy with my purchases. All right, now this is an interesting one. Between Pop! OS, Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, and Arch, which one would you suggest? But me personally, I use Arch, okay? I mean, you told me nothing. You gave me 5 different Linux distributions. Which one would you suggest? For what? You didn't tell me what you were doing on these computers. What kind of computer user are you? What kind of work you plan on doing? Or if you're working, are you gaming on the computer? Like, I don't know. I will say, you just named 5 very popular Linux distributions: Pop! OS, Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, and Arch. Yeah. I'm going to suggest, use one of them. That's my suggestion. Yeah, go for it. Pick whichever one of those 5 you want to use. You'll be okay. back to content creation on Linux. I mentioned Kdenlive, of course, is my video editor. One other thing I've used to edit videos, I did want to just briefly mention Blender, because Blender is kind of an interesting project. So this is really for it's animation software and like 3D modeling software. Like Blender is a very powerful, it's almost like a suite of tools because it does so much. It does come with a rather rudimentary video editor. So you can edit videos with Blender. I've done it and it's not horrible, but I don't do it now, and I wouldn't recommend you guys using Blender as a video editor because, again, Blender is really meant for animations, 3D modeling, and things. You know, it's not a video editor. It's kind of like if I was doing a job and I had a whole bunch of screws to turn. Would I go grab a screwdriver? Or would I go grab a multi-tool? You know, one of those multi-tools that has a little bitty screwdriver in it and also some scissors and a knife and a saw. And, you know, and that's kind of what you're doing with Blender. If you're using Blender as a video editor, you're actually using this multi-tool that has all these different components to it. They can do a lot of things, but you're really using it just for a video editor. And that's not really, you should actually go and use a proper video editor like Kdenlive if that's all you're doing with Blender. But Blender, one of the most popular pieces of free and open source software out there, so I did want to mention it. As far as graphics, GIMP is what I use for creating any kind of artwork, YouTube banners and headers, thumbnails, anything I need an image for, I just create it in GIMP. GIMP is pretty fantastic. So, matter of fact, why don't we just create a thumbnail real quick? So typically I would do something like, I don't know, take a screenshot of something. I'll take a screenshot of my desktop. Let me move my head out of the way and I've got a key binding here to take a quick screenshot. You guys won't see it. I just took a screenshot. Now let me get back to my GIMP window and let me go. And let's open this file I saved in my screenshots folder. And it's this here. All right, I just saved that. Let's go to brightness and contrast. Let's turn up the contrast a little bit so that picture really stands out. You know, more contrasty, the better. Is contrasty a word? Yeah, maybe. And then I'm going to scale this image down. It's 1920 by 1080, but YouTube has some rules as far as file size, and just make sure that the file size comes in under what it needs to be. We'll scale it down to 1280 by 720. We'll scale this down. And then, you know, I could write some text on the screen. Oh, I'm still on brightness and contrast. Let me get to the font tool. All right. Example, thumbnail. Awesome. But you know what? Let's jazz it up a little bit. Let's alternate. You guys know I typically alternate my colors from white, purple. We'll add some black. Let's do a new layer on top of this layer. And I'm just going to draw a box around it. And I'll do Shift B for background and fill that in with the foreground color here, which is white, but I'm going to go to colors. Let's invert that to make that black. And then let's draw another box right here on top of this one. We're just going to do something rather quick. That's fine. Then I'll R to reverse the colors here, or to do the rectangle, and X to reverse the colors. So I'm doing the rectangle tool. You can keybind that to R, or actually I think it's the default keybinding in GIMP. Now, purple right there on top of that white color. And now over here, oh, you guys can't see. You guys missed all that. Well, that's fine. We'll just do it all again. I'll discard all of this. So what I did, I took a screenshot, and then I went to my screenshots folder here where I saved that screenshot, and I opened this. So we're going to do brightness and contrast. I'm going to turn up the contrast. Typically, you want a lot of contrasty pictures. And again, now that I've done that, let me go ahead and make this an appropriate size, 1280 by 720. So this is what I start with. And then I'm going to add some text, and I'm going to do an example thumbnail. And let's alternate some colors here. Now that I've done that, I'm going to do a new layer on top of the text here. I'm going to draw a box with the rectangle tool. And Shift B for background. It does that background fill, which is white, the foreground color, but I'm going to invert it to black on this first one. And then I'll just draw another rectangle. Once again, I'll do Shift B to fill that in. Shift B actually just, it selects the background fill tool, and then clicking in the box will actually fill it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do X to reverse the colors here. See, I've got white and purple. X will reverse them. And now Shift B for background, and then click it. And now what I'm going to do is get the layers over here. Remember, I had the bottom layer, which is the screenshot. I had the next layer, which is the text, which you can't see because the third layer is these boxes. Well, I'm going to take this one here and drag it above that one. There we go. And now I'm going to go to layer, merge down. That way the boxes and the text are on their own layer. I could Control X to cut it, Control V to paste it. I could drag it around wherever I wanted to, you know, do that. Let's put that back on its own layer. If I wanted to draw a box around this layer here, what I could do is select the whole layer, Control A to select the whole layer, and I could go to Edit, Stroke Selection, Line Width 20, and the line color will be whatever foreground color is currently selected. Do that, you know, you can do a lot of really neat things in GIMP. So let's discard all of that. I've done some videos before on GIMP, you know, that was just, you know, very straightforward as far as, you know, importing a photograph or a screenshot, adding some text, playing with colors, playing with the contrast, playing with saturation. So GIMP is definitely what I use for all the artwork, channel headers, everything on YouTube. So all of this, all these were done obviously in GIMP. You know, and a lot of this is really just desktop screenshots, right? Or gameplay screenshots or whatever it happens to be, right? And of course, it depends on the kind of content you're making as well. For most people, you know, taking screenshots is probably not something they need to do. A lot of, if you're doing more vlog style content, you know, it's whatever you happen to have on your camera, you know, save a frame somewhere, or if it's you mainly doing talking head kind of video, it's just a headshot of you, or, you know, it's just a photo of you. It's for audio editing, Audacity. I don't typically need to do audio editing where you know, Audacity is something I rarely open. The only time I open Audacity is if something really went wrong in a recording and I need to do some heavy editing of the audio. Because for simple audio editing, Kdenlive has some basic audio editing capabilities. But if you know, if something, again, went horribly wrong with the audio track, you could open up Audacity, and then you would import your audio track or a video track that also included an audio track, right? And from here, you have various things you could do. You can go into effects, volume and compression. This category here, I could amplify or, you know, reduce the volume. I could add a compressor if, you know, if we need to compress the audio track. Pitch and tempo. Now, typically you're not going to play with these, but if you're doing some kind of fancy effects, like when I do like my horror movie trailers, you know, those funny videos that I typically do around Halloween every year. I typically make like a horror movie trailer, and it's me speaking on the on those things, but to make it kind of sound like a horror movie, I'll change the pitch. I'll drop the pitch down by like a step and a half, to get that really deep, kind of scary sounding voice. Got some other EQ things you could do. I typically don't play with the EQ. But again, you got other effects like echo and reverb. Probably more for kind of music effects. You're probably not going to do that with voice, but Audacity is what you need for an audio editor as far as free and open source audio editing. Back to the chat. We've been going for about an hour. Probably go for another 15 minutes or so because I don't have... That's essentially, we've covered a lot of the audio video stuff. I do want to cover writing as far as word processing and presentation software as well, especially presentation software, because sometimes you will do that on camera, on video, depending on, again, what kind of video content you're making. You may have to create slideshows or PDFs. All right. Let's see. Yeah, DT does his audio editing with overpowered audio hardware. Yeah, typically, as long as nothing has gone crazy with, some of my audio equipment, I shouldn't have to do any serious audio editing where I need something like Audacity. Where Audacity comes in is if there was a problem where, knobs got turned that I didn't know about, or Pulse Audio volume control problems too. Pulse Audio, picks the wrong input. And I'm not actually recording on the mic I should be recording on. I'm recording on the crappy mic that's built into the camera. And then I need a proper audio editor because I'm gonna have to work hard to make that audio. I'm not gonna make it respectable, but I'll make it to where at least maybe somebody will watch the video. Sometimes you'll also have software, it's not just hardware issues, sometimes software issues, like something went wrong with OBS or Pulse Audio, levels get changed, filters in OBS that got added that didn't need to be added, or removed that should have been there, whatever it happens to be. Sometimes just weird things happen. And you don't know about it, sometimes. If you didn't do an audio check, because 99 times out of 100, things just work, right? It's that one time out of 100, all of a sudden, some gremlin got into my office and changed things. And then, that's the time I didn't do a sound check and I recorded a 30-minute video and the audio is just horrible. And now I got to open up Audacity and do my best, to fix things. Sometimes you can't fix it though. Depending on how bad the audio is, sometimes you just can't fix it. Especially if it's a gain problem where the gain is so high that the audio is just completely blown out. Like there's no real way to fix something like that. Sometimes you just have to re-record. Yeah, is there a way to reduce the volume of a baby crying over the wedding vows? No. If it's already on the audio track, no. Yeah. That's something that would have had to have been eliminated by using a proper mic with certain gain levels set to where hopefully the baby was far enough away, the crying didn't pick up on the mic, but the mic was close enough to the priest or whoever's performing the ceremony. But yeah, once it's there, it's a mixture of his voice and the baby crying, trying to separate the two, good luck with that. But no, it's probably, I wouldn't even try it. It's just something that you're going to have to live with at this point. Similar problems, I'm just going to go ahead and mention this. For those of you that do vlogs, outdoor type vlogs. You do anything near running water or running stream or whatever, you know, waterfall, whatever it happens to be, just know that your audio is going to have all of that noise over whatever it is you're talking on camera. You know, everybody's going to hear the water. Same thing if it's really windy, although most people are conscious of that. Like if it's a windy day, most people will put on a windscreen on the microphone or whatever, you know, to try to reduce that wind noise. But a lot of people forget about things like water when they're outdoors. All right, the last thing I wanted to mention, for any kind of documents you're creating, whether it be word processing, spreadsheets, PDFs, presentation software, slideshows, LibreOffice, right? I think everybody knew where I would be going with that, right? And we're just talking about the entire LibreOffice suite, but I'm going to focus specifically on the word processing. So many of you guys, I mean, we're talking about content creation, video and audio content creation, but for those of you that get into writing, you know, you can write things, obviously, with a word processor. Oh, here is my book, you know, written in LibreOffice. And speaking of which, let's talk about some of the stuff here. For example, graphics. These images here. These were created in GIMP, right? It's all free and open source software. Everything that I do typically is free and open source software. So any image that you see in this thing, and there's a lot of them that I created using GIMP. You know, I had to spend some time on some of this stuff. Some of them are screenshots of desktop applications or whatever it happens to be. Some of them are actual images that I had to create from scratch. But most of it, obviously, being a word processor, is just text. You're just writing text. And, you know, formatting, and, you know, it gets deep as far as setting up page size and your margins and creating the headers and footers. If you're using footnotes, or you're using a bibliography, you're creating a table of contents. It's a very, very, very deep rabbit hole to go in, depending on how serious you need to get into that. But let's get into something a little bit more applicable to video content creation. Let's open up the presentation. So LibreOffice Impress, the presentation software. So a lot of times, if I'm doing a video, you know, sometimes I will create a PDF or slideshow, and I just do these typically on Impress. So I create my little slideshows, got these images, like this background image I created, excuse me, in GIMP. Most of it is text. Sometimes I will do fancier things. Let me find one where I actually had to do a little something. It may take me a second here, guys. I may have to go search for some things. Give me a second. How about this one? Yeah. And I don't need that window. But like this here, you can draw basic shapes. Like I drew these triangles. You know, you can draw boxes. You can draw lines. Like all of this. This is not an image I created in something like GIMP. I created that in LibreOffice Impress, right? Because you can draw basic shapes, you can draw lines, solid lines, dotted lines. I drew this circle, whatever it happens to be. You can create tables, right? And then you can save it in the ODP presentation format, that's LibreOffice format. If you wanted to, you could run this as a slideshow. I could hit start first slide, and it'll actually run this ODP file as a slideshow. You know, I could run it from here if I wanted to. What I do, though, is I typically export as PDF. Then once I have the PDF, I'll actually open the PDF. And my slideshows are typically Zathura in a PDF. So let me open this again, go to Oh, this here. Let's open with Zathura. Kill the file manager. Let's make this full screen. And typically my slideshows are just all keyboard driven, you know, one slide at a time. Using Zathura, which again, free and open source software as well. It's just a standard PDF viewer. So I think we covered a lot of the main pieces of software I work with on a somewhat regular basis. I use OBS almost every day. Anytime I'm recording, I'm using OBS. And pretty much 99% of the videos I've ever edited were edited in Kdenlive. I have played with other things. Blender I just mentioned for you guys that are into 3D modeling and animation. That's not me. GIMP, I use GIMP pretty much every time I make a video. I got to make a thumbnail, I use GIMP. Audacity, I don't have to use that often. Depending on what you're doing with audio, you could actually use Audacity also just to record audio only. Like if you were making an audio only podcast, you weren't recording a video. Instead of using something like OBS to record, you wouldn't, because why? You don't need video, so why use OBS? You just record directly into Audacity. And LibreOffice. If you're a serious writer, then, you know, if you're wanting to use free and open source software, LibreOffice is probably what you need. Their spreadsheet software is also really good. The presentation software is really good. I use it all the time. Of course, depending on what kind of job you have, you may be required to work with Microsoft Office. Compatibility with Microsoft Office formats and LibreOffice formats sometimes is not the greatest. So, you know, you will have that to consider if you're using this at a job, right? For me, I'm lucky because this is just me, right? I don't have a boss that I have to please. Right? I don't have a boss that's going to say, no, don't send me that word processing document as a ODT. I want it in DocX, right? Or whatever Microsoft proprietary format. You know, I don't have to worry about that. I can do whatever the hell I want. And it's nice. I understand, though, a lot of people, especially if you're at a university or you have some corporate job, you are kind of hamstrung sometimes on the tools that you're allowed to use. All right. So we have been streaming for about an hour and 15 minutes. Let's spend a few minutes with a Q&A session in the chat. So you guys got any questions, especially about content creation, any of these tools I talked about, but also anything else you want to talk about? We'll open up the phone lines here. Well, not really a phone line, but the YouTube chat. Yeah, Akami says, Kdenlive used to crash a lot. I don't know about recently. Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. And now, here in the last few years, Kdenlive has the ability to restore itself after a crash. So typically, you know, if it crashes and you reopen Kdenlive, it'll ask you, you want to restore what you were working on. It'll remember where you were at. It always is fine. Now, we're used to, you would lose work. It's been a long time since I've actually lost any work due to a Kdenlive issue as far as a crash. It's been at least a couple of years, so it's gotten a lot better in that respect. Regarding video editing, were there any news about the Olive editor recently? I don't know. I've never really looked at Olive. It's one of those projects I'm never going to look at it. It's one of those things that would look nice. It's like, hey, this one guy is working on this thing. One guy on a video editor. Like, video editor's like a big job, right? You think Kdenlive has the thousands of different effects and compositions, various features in it because one person is working on it? No, right? You can't. The Olive editor, I hope I'm wrong. I hope one day it's great, you know, and it works, you know, but it's one of those things. I'm very pessimistic about the chances of that thing ever, you know, getting to where it needs to be. And one of the things that, you know, with my content, I don't like highlighting pieces of software that I don't think are going to be around for very long. I typically don't I don't showcase distributions that I have a strong inkling that, that's probably not going to be around 6 months from now. Certain software projects, certain window managers, desktop environments, sometimes people email me about, hey, this thing that just came out yesterday. Saw it's 1.0 release. Or sometimes it's even an alpha or a beta release of a piece of software. It's like, okay, well, if it is brand new, how about let's give it 6 months, a year, a little time to mature. Also, just to make sure that whoever created this thing is going to keep working on it. Make sure it has some staying power. Let's see. Penguin Bite. What are your thoughts on using TinyCore Linux as a daily driver? TinyCore is very, very, very tiny. That's what I'm going to say. Most people, I'm going to say almost everybody would hate using TinyCore as an actual desktop operating system. That's probably not where you want to go. TinyCore, something like TinyCore is it's a real niche kind of product. And it's something typically you're probably going to want to run as like a live USB, probably something you're just going to run in memory, but actually installing it on a computer, running it as a daily driver. The software availability would be a big problem with something like TinyCore as well. It's just not, it's the wrong tool for that job. Again, if you're just trying to use it like a normal computer, you're not going to be happy with that at all. I'm just going to go ahead and save you that heartache. DT, have you heard about the Dead Beef music player? Well, of course. It's my audio player. Do I have Dead Beef installed? Yeah. There's Dead Beef, right? I've done videos about Dead Beef, at least one video for sure, a few years ago. And it's fantastic as far as, it's kind of a basic minimal audio player, but it's nice. It does what it needs to. DT, any plans on pushing the Void Linux topic any further in the near future? Well, pushing that topic further, have I ever considered like hopping to Void Linux, living in Void Linux for a little while? I have thought about that. I've considered, I don't hop these days. That's the thing. And that's the problem. Is I don't want to hop. I'm not interested in hopping. And that's kind of what I'd have to do to really do a deep dive into something like Void, look at the ins and outs. And these days, I like all of my software to just work. And distro hopping, especially frequent distro hopping, is detrimental to things just working. You're constantly breaking things if you're constantly hopping. So I kind of swore off distro hopping. I used to do it all the time. In the early days of the channel, I would often distro hop on my main machines. There was a period of time there where I was on, probably 6, 7 different distributions in the course of 2 months at one point in the channel's history, where I was really doing a lot of hopping, and it was frustrating because it was getting in the way of me actually making videos. Because if you're hopping all the time, hell, half the time things don't work, right? You hop. Certain things are broken. You fix those things. By the time you get everything fixed, and you're hopping again, and then you're hopping again, and no. But as far as, a deeper dive into Void Linux at some point, I have no plans for it. Not against the idea, but again, we'll see. What is your opinion on Arch as a daily driver? Yeah, Arch is fine. Right? Arch is a real distribution, unlike TinyCore, which is very specialty kind of distribution, and you're going to have a lot of problems with something like TinyCore. Arch is a normal Linux distribution. Arch is fine. Off topic. What is your favorite Beethoven symphony cycle? Favorite Beethoven symphonies? Well, I like all 9 symphonies. As far as being a trombone player, there's only 3 of them that have trombone parts. what, 5, 6, and 9. And all of those are great. I love 5, 6, and 9, especially. But again, being a trombone player, kind of biased on the ones that have trombone parts. As far as the best symphony, I really love the 7th Symphony. If I'm being honest, there's no trombone parts. I got to hold something against it, being a trombone player. But the 7th Symphony, I love. Fantastic. Especially the slow movement, the second movement of that thing is good music. StormOS Dev, which I'm assuming that's Ben Fitzpatrick. He says, I renamed my channel. I felt it best going forward. Okay. I was wondering who that was, StormOS Dev, but I'm pretty sure that's Ben. Changing his name, switching it up on us. Gentoo is what you want to go to, DT. I'm not compiling software. I have no plans on ever living in a distribution that I have to compile things. Just because of time, right? I don't like wasting time. If I wasn't a content creator, if I, wasn't doing things on this computer, if I'm just your average desktop computer user, yeah, Gentoo makes sense. But hell, I'm making videos practically every day. I can't have my computer constantly compiling and me also recording or streaming, because you can't do both at the same time either. When the computer is compiling, it's sucking up all the CPU to compile that software, which means I have no CPU available for this stream, which also requires a lot of CPU, right? So again, right tool for the right job. Source-based distributions are not the right tool, really. If you're going to be constantly recording and live streaming, it's just not where I want to be. Darius, I thought you'd write your book fully in org mode using LaTeX support. I did write a lot of it in org mode initially, and then imported it into LibreOffice to do the formatting. As far as, using LaTeX, I didn't go that route. But obviously, just because I'm used to doing things with the Vim key bindings, right? I did everything in Emacs Evil Mode using org, right? So I write it all out in org for the most part, then put it in LibreOffice, and then work on various formatting issues. Let's see. I thought, I already got that one. Yeah, Derek, it's Ben. Okay, StormOS Dev is in fact Ben. All right. Do you play Xonotic lately? I haven't played Xonotic in a while. It's been a few months. I haven't played any first-person shooters lately, but I'm not horrible at them. And occasionally, when I get into them, I'll play them every day for a couple of weeks, and every day for like 10-15 minutes. But I'll play every day for like 10-15 minutes every day for like a solid 2, maybe 3 weeks, just to remember how to play first-person shooters. And I'll start getting a lot better at them in the course of a couple weeks, and then I'll quit playing them for a while. And then the next time I play, I suck again. How did you learn the Vim key bindings, DT? You just start using Vim. Go through the Vim tutor. Open a terminal. Type Vim tutor, all one word, and it's going to tell you exactly what to do. The lesson 1.1, moving the cursor. Well, I'm going to scroll down with the mouse wheel, but you can see H, J, K, L, right? So let's start using those. I'm not. There we go. Just start using H, J, K, L while you're reading the document. Just hit the things it tells you to hit. If you're unsure about anything you typed, press escape, right? I to get into insert mode, escape to get into normal mode, J to move down, right? Exiting Vim, let's go ahead and learn that. Let's do a colon, Q, exclamation point. And then get back into VimTutor and go back down and continue with the rest of the lesson. And you just read, X will delete a character. So let's get rid of M with the X, and the O with the X, and the V with the X, and then U to undo. I don't know if it's got to U yet, but it probably will shortly after it tells you how to delete things and insert things. I don't know. I don't know where the undo is in here. Let's search for undo. Lesson 2.7, the undo command. Wow, they wait a long time to tell you about the undo command. The undo command is obviously one of the first things I talk about on my Vim videos, because I actually think it's a much more important command. Because most people, when they start playing around in Vim, they're worried about, messing things up, especially if they're playing with important files. So yeah, U to undo. You should make a Super Tux Kart series. I can't play Super Tux Kart. I can't do all that drifting and stuff. I've never been able to figure out how any of that stuff works. Maybe it's an issue with my equipment. My split keyboards and my trackball mouse. I don't know if it has it, but I just don't. I can't really beat Super Tux Kart. And anybody that plays it, as far as real human beings, if they're any good, they're just going to destroy me. So yeah, Merc says DT's video on Vim basically was VimTutor. Yeah, I covered. I would bet I probably covered everything that is in the VimTutor. Maybe some stuff that isn't, because the VimTutor is kind of the basics of Vim, but it doesn't go real deep into things. Like, there's still a lot of other stuff with Vim, but if you get through the VimTutor, like you're 95% there. Like you can do what you need to do with Vim. You'll get into more complicated things later, like macros and command mode and some of the things you can do there. Yeah, Super Tux Kart requires a full race sim setup, huh? DT, I know you're using a trackball. Would you recommend switching to a trackball for other Tiling Window Manager users? Have you found any advantages and drawbacks compared to normal mice? So the advantages is, yeah, my wrist on my right hand quit hurting a lot from switching to the trackball, because, a regular mouse, you're constantly having to move that thing around. You got your hand on it and you're having to move it around the desk. Obviously, you don't do that with a trackball. It never moves, right? I'm just got my hand on it and I just move my finger around the ball. Yeah, it's a very slight movement, but I'm not moving my arm anymore all around the desk. And yeah, a lot of wrist pain, hand pain will go away if you have those issues. So I would strongly consider it. Drawbacks, no. Maybe when you're gaming, something like a first-person shooter, for example, you're going to be terrible at it with a trackball, because it's a very different kind of game now that you've changed the mouse, right? Now you can get used to it. I do all of my first-person shooter thing. I do all of my gaming with my trackball, even first-person shooters. And again, I'm not horrible at first-person shooters, even on the trackball, but it takes some getting used to. But outside of gaming, I can't imagine. Drawbacks, none. There's nothing. No kind of drawback. DT, as a content creator, learning Vim was like a hacking for me. Yeah? Hi, Derek. Are you going to conduct streams on DT Options? Maybe. Yeah, of course. We'll eventually do some streaming on the other channel. It's a new channel. I don't even know if I have streaming privileges over there yet. Probably. I forget how all of that works. Why don't you use a TrackPoint keyboard? Because none of the keyboards I like to use have track points. I mean, I use these split keyboards, right? These ZSA keyboards mainly, which are, mechanical programmable keyboards, but none of them have a track point. Sorry about that. My phone went off. Well, we have been streaming for about 90 minutes, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of here before my phone does start ringing. And I do have some appointments to keep for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this very brief stream, right? This is a 90-minute short stream, right? I said we'd go for an hour. We ended up going for an hour and a half, but it was a good time. At least it was for me. I hope it was a good time had by all. Talked a little bit about the content creation, as far as the software I use, all free and open source software. Every program I talked about today, free and open source, free as in freedom, free also as in cost, all of it available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So if you missed the early part of the stream where we discussed some of that stuff, you can go back and rewatch the stream later today, or, you know, at your earliest convenience. Before I go, though, I do want to thank you guys in the YouTube chat. Your questions and comments and interaction, always appreciated. I do also want to thank the patrons. So I'm going to show some OBS scenes here. We talked about OBS and scenes in OBS. Here's some scenes with some names of patrons. And this scene here of me giving you guys the peace sign. Peace, guys.